Skorch the Fears episode. He didn't put the episode number we're at. I think we're at like 63 or something like that. 64. My VA completely forgot to do that. But dude, Josiah, my man, I am so glad you're here. Guys, people don't know this. Josiah, you were my first mentor ever. You were like my very, very, very first real estate mentor, right? Because I joined AstroFlipping back in the OG days when Josiah was running the calls, right? So anyways, man, back in the day when I didn't even know what an assignment was, I'm like, what do you mean by a double close? What is a double close, Josiah? Back like 3 years ago. So Josiah is amazing, guys. He is the CEO of Keyglee. Jamil is the face. He's running around doing all sorts of stuff. And then Josiah keeps the ship running. So just real quick, Josiah, for the people that don't know you, like, who are you? Like, what do you do at Keyglee? Are you actually just the puppet master? People want to know.
That's awesome. I love it, dude. Actually, bro, as of like 2 weeks ago, I'm now the chairman of Keyglee, and Hunter Rumney is the CEO. Yeah.
What does that mean? Explain that to people.
So honestly, I think it's super exciting, man. So Hunter is extraordinarily talented, one of the founding four members of Keyglee. Bro, at one point, I think I even had this in Astro, but Hunter was 18. He did 50 deals without taking a phone call when he was 18 years old. In 1 year. Yeah. I know, dude. So the dude is like, he's like a prodigy / quant. Now, obviously, this is, 7, 8, 10, whatever years later. So he's also got some really good executive chops as well now. But extremely talented, extremely smart. And so basically what it looks like for me is we and also the reason why we chose a chairman for my position is because, bro, honestly, like I love Keyglee to death. And so I'm like, all right, so Hunter, is it cool if I just still come to this meeting? Hunter's like, oh my God,
right.
But yeah, dude. So both Hunter and I are deeply involved in Keyglee operations, right? Which is everything from the franchising operations and franchise success and fulfillment, and then also on the corporate store side of things, where we're kind of building out, testing new things, and growing those markets. So it's a blast, dude.
What's the difference between a chairman and a CEO? Like, I sort of know what I think of with a chairman is like a dude sitting back in a leather chair, just being like, I did it. I'm good. I'm smoking my cigars, hanging out with my family. All I do is just get investor money. Maybe, I don't know. Like, what does a chairman do versus the CEO? Just so people know.
Great question, dude. So the conventional divide between CEO and chairman is normally the chairman is the head of the board, right? And so the board elects the CEO and passes down policy to the CEO, right? Mm-hmm. And so the chairman is the one that runs the board, right? The CEO and is the one that chooses the CEO, right? And so generally the board or a committee at the board is going to choose the compensation for the CEO. They're going to choose if they fire the CEO. They're going to be the ones that hire the new CEO, are involved in that process. And then they're going to lay out policy, right? Like, these are the different policies for how we want this to run. These are some, and kind of direct those things at the board level and pass that to the CEO. Then the CEO runs the company. Right. So everyone in the company reports up to the CEO. They don't report into the board. Right. But the CEO reports into the board, if that makes sense. So the chairman is the head of the board. And so you'll see some people that have like a chairman title, but really they're just kind of like living life. You know what I mean? Just like posting or whatever.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, is he just like chilling now, or what does that even mean?
Yeah, definitely not. But so some people just kind of ride that direction, and really they're like, all right, sweet, I'm out, but this is a way for me to still seem involved, and that's a lot different than what we've got set up at Keyglee. So anyhow, that's the conventional. Ours is a little bit more mixed. I have more involvement probably than what would be the normal conventional divide. But the other thing too, though, is balancing, because Hunter's a very capable leader and really skilled. And so there's also a balance there, because if you've got two people that are supposed to be leading at the exact same level, then you get a lot of confusion in the ranks, right? And that's also really not ideal. And so there also needs to be a clear separation of like, dude, this is Hunter's domain and he owns it. So just there's a balance between those two as well, which is yeah, honestly, it's been
also just curious, where is Jamil in this? Is Jamil just kind of just like the poster child at this point? Like I'm curious if what his job role is. I mean, I know he's a founder, so he owns like on the side of it, but I'm just curious. Like now that I have you.
Good question, man. So he is the chief of business development, right? And so business development is new business and growth of the company, right? And so that's heavy on the marketing side. It's heavy on the recruiting side. It's heavy on bringing in resources and high level relationships that allow the company to move forward. And so he's got a very external focus, right? Which honestly, bro, I think is like okay. Everyone has different giftings, right? Jamil is just incredibly talented in that arena, right? And so if there's certain relationships or strategic partnerships, things like that we need to bring in, Jamil he's all over that stuff, right? So he is kind of out front of the company, blazing the trail through relationships and growth, right? And then on the flip side of it, right, and obviously that growth aligns with the CEO's vision. And then on the flip side of it, we're managing, right? And Hunter heads up managing the actual entity, right? And supporting that growth, if that makes sense. So
no, it totally makes sense.
Yeah. All components are we're super blessed, dude, in that they flow together really nicely. And we all work together exceptionally well. And it's been a that's for sure. And it's also just been a really great, I was going to say like cocktail of ingredients that's really allowed us to succeed and do well. So
I love it. I mean, guys, how many wholesaling companies do you guys know have a chairman? I'd say none. I don't think I know a single wholesaling company that has a freaking chairman, right? So like this is the caliber of like corporate professionalism we're dealing with now with like Keyglee and like this man who's created like a beast of an empire. So I'm humbled to have you on here. Love you, dude. First mentor. He helped me do with the double closings at the beginning. We were joking about it, I think, at the very beginning of this podcast.
Dude, one shout out, bro. I have to give you a huge shout out too, though, because one thing that like Jonah, you're freaking phenomenal, like world class at is like it wasn't. Some people are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do AstroFlipping, and then they kind of like are a little here, a little there, right? They watch some of the videos. Jonah was like, dude, you were on like every call. You were like, bro, I'm bringing my A game. You always got your time. You slid in to get your questions answered, right? You always asked good questions, and you stuck with it. You're like, all right, cool. I understand that, but what about this, right? Like, what about here's the nuance in my situation. Can you help me with that? And honestly, dude, that is effort on your end, right? Which led you to be successful. You know what I mean? And so, and to really crush it, bro. So like, kudos to you, bro, because you bought your own ticket, man. Like you're the one that paved your own way essentially in going after it and getting what you needed, which was,
I love it. I don't understand how people don't do that. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, I get a chance to talk to these guys every week to figure out my wholesaling business. Amazing. Done. I'm going to be there every day. But anyways, enough of the past, or enough of my past. We're here to interview you. So in terms of, I want to go back way back in time to Josiah. He's just starting to get into real estate. He's just starting to get into wholesaling. Josiah, what was like your greatest fears when you were just starting out? Like, what were the fears you had to overcome that you were dealing with when you were starting in real estate?
Yeah, dude. So honestly, kind of a few, bro, or kind of a lot, honestly. I can think of two like distinct instances that kind of spell them out. One is like I was just afraid of calling anyone, bro, because like I was 17 at the time, right? So in my mind,
damn, you started at 17.
Yeah, so in my mind, bro, like I was legitimately scared to call. Like if I had to order a pizza, bro, like I wouldn't do that because like in my mind, those people were like adults and I was this kid. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so like I literally, bro, was scared. Like if I had to call Papa John's and order freaking pepperoni.
Okay.
So like, so there was that, dude. Like as far as having to have communication with someone else, I felt just basically entirely unqualified in every possible way, kind of, right? And so I think that was being on the phone with anyone was a ginormous fear. I was also the guy like in high school, bro. Like I didn't freaking raise my hand. Like I didn't talk in class. Like I remember, I think I talked like 2 times in all of high school, and I distinctly remember both times. And it's because I got called on. You know, it wasn't like I raised my hand. It was like the teacher's like, all right, Grimes, you're talking. And I'm like, oh, crap. So,
hey, right.
Yeah, dude. So, and that's where I was at 17. You know what I mean? Because that was all I hadn't overcome that. You know, like I hadn't overcome that fear of talking in the classroom or anything like that. I didn't call people on the phone. And so that was one huge fear, right? It was like, holy crap, I'm going to just make myself look like a buffoon trying to talk to people. And so that was one. And I've got a story for that too. It was hilarious. Basically, my mentor at the time, who was Cody, and Cody asked me to call
Cody Sperber?
Sperber, yeah.
And
so
Cody, interesting. Wait,
yeah,
how'd you meet Cody Sperber? I'm like curious.
Oh, yeah. So the way I met, so I went to this Pitchathon, right, which is basically an event where they have one person go up for an hour and talk about how much money they've made, more or less, and then try to sell you something at the end. But I was 17 and I didn't know that that's what this was. It was just like one person tries to sell you, then the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, right? And the person hosting the event that got everyone there takes a portion of the money made, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times like 50%. And then all the speakers come and speak for free because they're just there to sell their stuff, and then they make the other 50% of whatever they sold.
Right.
So I didn't know that. I was just in the audience like, man, this is legit, you know, like getting sold over and over and over again. You know what I mean? So like,
right.
All right. And so anyhow, one of the guys that was on stage pitched wholesaling. And he was like, in real estate, you can take $10 and you can make $30,000. And I was like, $10. And bro, I didn't raise my hand to ask questions or anything when you were supposed to ask questions because that wasn't me yet. So I just waited till the very end, and I went up to the guy and I was like, hey, really quick, hey man, so you said like $10 to make $30,000. You know, I'm like, I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like, I want to have rentals at some point because apparently that makes you money at this point. That's what my brain knows. Only you need a ton of money in order to buy rentals. So I don't know how that's going to happen.
Right.
And then I've also got other people telling me like, you don't want any debt. So to me, like buying a rental is impossible, bro, because it's like, I got to save up 300 grand to then make $1,000 a month. Yeah, exactly. Dude. It was hilarious. Good times. And so the guy's like, no, like $10. I was like, what the heck? So anyhow, talking to the guy that cuts my hair. Okay, which has since retired, which is why if you ever wonder why my hair always looks a little jank, it's his fault, bro. You got to blame.
It looks
John
great,
Crawford.
dude. I don't know what you're talking about. That's some of the best hair. You're only competing with Ryan Pineda. That's bad.
Oh, dude, it's impossible.
That's about it. That's about it, though.
Thank you, bro. But so I went to the guy who cuts my hair. And I told him the story, and I was like, "Have you ever heard of anyone that's done that before?" And he's like, "Yeah, actually, I cut the hair of a guy that does that all the time." And so anyhow, it's kind of interesting how God opens doors, bro, because like, dude, I didn't want to do real estate. Like I wanted to make money online where I didn't have to see the other person and I'd have to talk to them and I didn't have to risk anything like looking stupid. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have to risk any of that and somehow I could magically make money. God was like, bro, listen, that's not a real thing. And I'm going to give you an opportunity and an open door in real estate. I was like, oh crap. So anyhow, long story short, dude, Cody just launched like a social media real estate thing. I got in there. I ended up buying his course. I ended up bugging him a whole bunch. The Clever Investor. Like I can't remember. It was like the very first version of Fast Track or something like that. And it was like $1,000. And so I bought that, watched the whole thing, reviewed it for Cody and stuff. And then I went out and bought some Cody gave me a call and said, hey man, you like what? And this was cool. Like Cody he just launched the course. So he was calling people and he called me. He said, hey man, what do you think of the course? I was like, I really loved it. And he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna give you some next steps. What you should do is you should go down to the auctions and you should find someone that you can just work for free to learn the business. Right. And on my side, I was two things. I was kind of like, well, dang, bro, like crap. I just bought a course and I gotta go work for someone for free. So there's a little bit of that. But then there was two, which was, dude, I was not normally the guy that would do this, but just kind of rose up in me a little bit. And I was like, I might as well just ask, dude. And I was like, well, could I just work for you? And Cody's like, no. I was like, Frank. I was like, all right, never mind. So I was like, all right, okay, yeah, I understand. It's all good. So then I ended up buying like $250 worth of bandit signs.
Wait, did you ever ask him why he said no? I'm curious why he said no.
I think he had an intern or something at that point.
Oh, okay.
And then, and I was just like a 17-year-old dude that was scared to call the pizza shop. You know what I mean? So like, there's also gotta weigh that too. But I basically then it was like, I don't know, a little while later, I sent him this text and I said, hey man, I bought a bunch of bandit signs. I'll put them out wherever you want for free. Just if I can learn. So anyhow, from there, I ended up being God hooked it up, bro. Cody's like, all right, dude, it's your shot. I'm gonna give you your shot, right? I was like, all right, let's do this. And met him for lunch. Then he sent me this property in Maryville, like this house that smelled like it was just hilarious, bro. It's a great time. And he's like, you got to rent to own this. Like, you got to sell this like rent to own, basically, or whatever, or bring me a client that will. Yes, sorry, lease option and rent to own this property. And I was like, okay, all right. So I went, put out like a handful of bandit signs. My very first phone call, dude, which I was just like, like super, like, all right, bro. I'm at my mom's.
Can I just say that sounded like you practiced that almost? That gulp was like, dude, no stops with the gulp.
That was a straight throwback, bro. That was it. That was the real thing. Okay. But
love it.
I'm like pacing around at my mom's music school, just like, because like this guy called and my heart's just like, dude, it was hilarious, bro. Like if you looked at my cortisol levels that whole day, it must have been like through the roof. Guy calls. I pick up the phone. I don't even know what I said. Anyhow, he's like, yeah, I want to see it. I was like, okay, cool. So I go out there. I'm driving my dad's car out there, right? And wearing like the only collared shirt I have. That's not my school uniform, and or my old school uniform. And so we show up at the house and we walk through. And Cody had given me one line. He's like, after they've looked at the house for a little while, if it seems like they like it, say, do you want to see what this would look like on paper? And so after a while, dude, them just walking through the house, I was like, maybe this is the time I bust out that line.
So you had no idea what that meant though, like what that entailed.
No,
whatsoever. You're just say it.
Like, bro, I just knew I had one line, okay, and just if they were walking around the house for a while, say that. Other than that, be as nice as possible. It was good, dude. It was good. So anyhow, long story short, they signed, and then Cody was like, all right, you got an internship. So that was kind of my segue to one meeting Cody, and then
wait a minute,
opening the door for me.
Cody, so you did end up working for Cody?
Yeah, so I did. No, he told me no.
Oh, okay.
And then I bugged him over text and said, hey, dude, I've got bandit signs I just bought. I'll put out for you for free. And so that was that's
a wild story. I love it. And I just love that story because it's so, what do you feel like in that moment got you over it? I mean, I understand there's a lot of people can think that, especially younger people, like 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, even what made you just say, screw it, I'm doing it?
Dude, so there's
we're making this happen.
There's 2 points. One, I was in front of my computer watching the training stuff, right? Before I had an internship or anything. And I was like, I just spent $1,000 and I was like, what's going to make this different? Because at that point I'd want to be an entrepreneur forever, basically. Right. And I tried a bunch of little businesses and they'd failed or not started or whatever. And a good chunk of them were just straight up terrible ideas. And then, or I sold like one thing and then I got distracted and quit or whatever. I don't know. Right. But I was like, what's going to make this different than everything else? And I was like, he's talking, Cody in the training was talking through, you're going to make phone calls and this is what the script's going to be like. And I just kind of had this moment where I said to myself, and I was like, you know what? I'm pushing through this. Like that's it, dang it. I'm doing it. Like I'm pushing. Yeah. I'm going to just do it. Right. And the thing is, that's really cool, man, is like the biggest cure to a phobia is exposure to that thing. That's the biggest cure. So like, if you're afraid of elevators, guess what you got to do to get over that fear? You have to get close to an elevator and then closer and then in it and then ride it. Right. And then the fear's gone. Right. And that's how our comfort zone works. Right. Our comfort zone encroaches on us unless we're pushing it back. Right. Which is why, like, I think it's the demographic. It's something like middle-aged women that are married to executives. Right. Or that have a certain that are basically stay-at-home moms or aren't working. Right. Married to executives. So they're likely to have a pretty comfortable life. Are the most likely to develop phobias, right? Like irrational fears of spiders, parking garages, airplanes, elevators.
It's because they're not pushing at all, right?
Yeah, exactly. So your comfort zone will encroach on you unless you push back. But what's cool is when you start to push back, it grows. It grows pretty fast, right? So like I had a friend that was kind of claustrophobic, and he there's this tunnel, and there's this tunnel where he lives, basically, right? And it's this long tunnel, and so he would always avoid it. right? Because when he would start to drive into the tunnel, like his heart would beat up and he'd start to have like almost like a panic attack, right? And so he'd been avoiding it for years. And then I can't remember if he read a book or what happened, but basically the whole bit on, yo, dude, exposure is what solves the phobia, right? Exposing yourself to it over and over again. Well, then it gets easier and easier and easier until it's well within your comfort zone and you're good with it. Like I could talk to a cash buyer right now. It doesn't bug me. I can call a million pizza guys. That's not gonna bug me anymore. Right. And so he's like, I'm going to drive through this tunnel. Right. And so I think the first time he went through, he had to ride with someone because he thought he might just crash or some shenanigans. Right. But he was like, I'm going to drive through this tunnel once a day. Right. And he did it for a month. And at the end of the month, he could drive through it himself. No problem. And so it cut like 30 minutes off of his commute. You know what I mean? And that he had for years. And really all he needed to do was expose himself repeatedly to that phobia. And now he's conquered it instead of it conquering him. Right.
I love that.
And yeah. So pretty neat, dude.
I love it. I mean, like that's a very similar thing to what I say to people, which is basically the issue, or at least how I've thought about it, is the issue is that you have the fear in front of you instead of behind you, is what I've always thought about it that way. It's like in the way that like a lot of people, the issue is you have the fear of cold calling, let's say, or getting sworn at over the phone. Right.
Yep.
And then like that's in front of you. So it's preventing you from doing action. Well, what you really should be focusing on, probably maybe this isn't the healthiest thing, and maybe this isn't like, I'm not a mental health expert. This might not be what you should do.
I know, yeah.
But I thought of it as like, I need to, what about the fear of if I don't do it? Like, what's going to happen? I don't know what
that's good.
My camera right
that's
now.
Good.
But like having the fear behind me of like, what happens if I don't do this? How much money am I going to lose? Am I going to be able to support myself, support my family, retire my parents? And then that fear pushes you forward. I don't know if it's as healthy because you're still afraid, but like that's how I thought about it.
Realistic,
and that's
I love it.
I mean, like to me, like it was just like the way where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna push through my fears because like I'm more scared of this demon than the one in front of me. And so I don't know if it's as healthy as yours. I kind of like yours more, but yeah. So basically, anywho, these are just two different ways. So obviously, eventually, though, you learned that you really don't need to cold call anybody. You can just cold call agents or like do it through wholesalers, right? Because that's what Keyglee does is they're dispo wholesalers and they work with agents a ton. How did you learn about this strategy? How did like, let's talk about like, because it sounds like you were doing direct to seller for a little bit and then you somehow switched to dispo wholesaling. What was that?
Yeah, dude, direct to seller. Yeah, dude. So we had started like direct to seller was kind of the default, right? Most people were doing some form of direct to seller. And honestly, bro, it was like a match made in heaven in a sense. And I somehow just lucked out and got to sit in the middle. Okay. That's basically what happened.
Okay.
I'm serious. So you've got Jamil on one side, right? Who's also working with his sister Rahima. And Jamil is just bringing in deals left and right on the acquisition side, right? And extremely talented working with AC wholesalers, right? We use AC wholesalers in the course so people can understand it, but basically wholesalers that are focused on acquiring properties, right? And so he was just better than anyone I'd ever seen, bro. Like just like so good. And so he was really great at building those relationships and then having them bring him property. Right. Same with agents, same with wholesalers and just suppliers in general. He was really phenomenal at that. And what was amazing about that is it then skipped the part where you had to go out and market. You know what I mean? Because conventionally speaking, especially at that point, like you'd spend $5,000 in postcards, you'd get 20 calls. 2 were actually decent calls that want to sell their house. You go on 2 appointments. Neither of them want to sell for what you need. You work on one for 3 months. Finally, they sell to you. And then you've got 10 days, your inspection period, to sell that property. And if you don't, you've wasted your $5,000. And if you do, maybe you make 15 and you actually net 10, or you make 10 grand and you net 5. Right. But it took you 3 months to get your $5,000 back. So then you deploy your $5,000 to marketing again, wait 3 more months, and congratulations, you've made like 35 or 40 grand in a year. You're like, that's, it's like, that's not gonna work. And, so basically, by going direct, right, he cut all of that out, and it allowed his volume to increase dramatically. Plus, instead of just working with one seller, he's working with a supplier, with an agent, and that can continue to bring him deals. And so that was the first thing. And Jamil was like the master on this end, right, just crushing that. On this side, you've got Hunter, who really laid the foundational groundwork for all of the tech and stuff that we use on the buyer adding side of things, right? And really going deep on how to add a high amount of buyers and then develop strong relationships with them. And so I was just sitting in the middle, right? And like the thing that maybe I brought was I had some pretty good sales chops, right? So in between properties coming in and then Hunter building this phenomenal list, Hunter and I were both focused on the sales side of the process, right? And then also a little bit vetting the deals on the front end here and there and whatnot. But basically we started creating this little cycle where it's like, dude, we got deals coming in on autopilot and we've got a huch buyers list that's absorbing them. And so it's like, bro, let's just keep doing this.
I love that.
This is great. And so we put a framework around that in SOPs and all that fun stuff. And then that's what became the nucleus or the core of Keyglee.
And then you've got a $100 million company, guys. Simple as that.
Yeah, dude.
Why doesn't everybody have one?
Oh my God.
Come on now. No, amazing. I love it. And so this is like very curious for me right now, because I'm right now highly considering a partnership in my business. So like what I love about these podcasts is I get to just steal moments to ask like high level people questions in public. It's great. It's amazing. But so like, for instance, like how did you make it work where, for instance, like Jamil, it sounds like maybe Jamil was doing more deals, or do you guys feel like you were doing the same amount of deals and then you just synergize? How does it work when people are in different places, and how do you start merging something together? Because you guys had your own operations at the beginning, right? So how did you guys like merge it? How did you know it was time to merge, if that makes sense?
Yeah, man. So I think the biggest thing was if you can see the added benefit, right? So like, for instance, Jamil's doing 15 deals a month by himself, and then paired with us, we can do 40. You know what I mean? Then it's better. Like, hey, this is good. Like, sweet.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I think that was, there's that portion of it, but then there's also just the different skill, we'll say like, what's the word I'm looking for? But different, just generally like different skills. You know what I mean? So like where Jamil is really phenomenal on that outward focus, Hunter and I are much better on the focus on the business structure and building the business, right? Internally, you know what I mean? And so, whereas Jamil is phenomenal, relationally focused, like bringing in the correct relationships, and extremely talented there. He's also talented internally, just like Hunter and I could probably go try our best, bear with us, to go create those external relationships. We both had strengths that complemented each other, right? And so when we were able to bring those together, that's what allowed us to really excel beyond what either of us could do one-on-one. So it's kind of like if you've got two horses that are running together, dude, there's some parable or some thing, right, where it's like one horse by itself can pull like 1,000 pounds, right, or something like that. I'm totally butchering this, bro. Also visiting like ranchers or farmers, dude, they're like, oh, this guy. But like one horse can pull like 1,000 pounds, two horses can pull like 10,000 or some shenanigans, right?
Right.
And that's true if both horses are going in the same direction, right? If one horse is turned around going this way, then one horse can pull 1,000 and two horses can pull nothing, right?
Right.
Because they're opposing each other. And so that's where like you want to make sure that you're aligned on like first principles, right? Is kind of a big thing, right? And so if you're aligned on first principles,
what are first principles?
So a great example, like in the tech space, and I think it was I can't remember if it was like Keith Ravos or I can never say that guy's last name correctly, unfortunately, but he's a really cool dude, and maybe Peter Thiel or something like that. But they were talking like the example they use in the tech space is open source versus closed, right? And so like if you've got a tech team, and some people think that, hey, what we build we shouldn't share with anyone, should be closed, right? I think it's just called closed source or something like that. Okay. And then versus open source, which is anything we invent, we should share with the world so everyone benefits, right? If you hire in a team that has both of those, or you have two founders that believes those two opposing views, it's going to be really hard for that organization to thrive, right? Because they're going to consistently bump into each other, right? And that's where I think it's interesting because I'm going to see if I can say these two words correctly. Homogenous groups, from like a first principle standpoint, right? Not from a diversity standpoint or anything or like that, but from a corporate business standpoint, you want to be aligned around one mission. And so homogenous groups are more palpable, just like one sports team that's focused around their game plan. They know their game plan. They're going to rock it, right?
Makes sense.
It's not two people going different directions than heterogeneous groups, right? Where you've got multiple game plans, maybe two missions trying to exist simultaneously. And both founders have different visions, right? If one founder wants to exit in 2 years and the other founder wants to keep the business forever, right? Those are opposed. You know what I mean? And so it's not going to be two horses running together where they get 10,000 versus 1,000. It's going to be two horses running against each other, or at least at a little bit of an angle. Whereas now, instead of even getting 1,000, they're getting 500 pounds pulled, right? And so I think alignment is hugely important. And then alignment, complementative capabilities, right? And then you probably are looking for somewhat equivalent competency, right? Across the board. So that's probably work ethic and then cognitive ability to some degree.
I gotcha. That was super interesting. I like that a lot. How have you ever dealt with, I'm just curious, because it is where you guys are compared to where you guys were are such different places, and like in such different like landscapes of human development of where you guys were probably as well as like even humans. How do you keep the horses moving always in the same direction? Like, I feel like as you're like, I don't even know, like, was it always the grand vision at the very, very beginning to be Keyglee what it is now? I know Jamil's talked about eventually either selling or like going public, I think, but like, have they ever diverged, or how do you bring them back together? Like, how does that work?
Great question, bro. And so there's two things that allow that to work, right? Especially when you're small, it's mostly just your constant conversation, right? And so you should be talking all of the time. And that's what meshes those two together and creates one, right? Is that constant communication, right? That's what they talk about in business, how communication is so important. But like, let's say that you're business partners and your company's starting to grow a little bit. And so you end up not talking to your business partner not that often. That will end poorly, almost always. Right. And so you need to set up your weekly meeting and you need to make sure you keep it, right? Where you're talking about, where you're syncing up on your data points, right? So if you were aligned at the beginning, right, and you both had kind of a similar vision, then one thing that will create a divergence between you two is if you both start to ingest different data points, right? So you're learning certain things about the business and hearing this from certain employees, and he's hearing this and learning different things about the business from these people over here, and hearing something different, maybe from title companies or something like that, if he's working that part of the business and you're working with Acadispo. So now you guys both, when you guys are solving the problem, you're using different data sets, right? And so you're coming up with both good solutions, but different solutions. Whereas if you guys had been communicating every week, he would have your data set and you would have his, right? And so you'd have one data set that you're making a decision, or you're creating a solution for, right? Or making a decision based off of. And then the solution or the decision that you guys make will be much more similar because you're making it from the same general data points, right? Since you guys were originally aligned on first principles, that generally works. And so that's one. Other than that, though, there's like cultural things, right? And so communication is huge, and just setting that up correctly. There's cultural different aspects, which we talk about even like in week 1 of AstroFlipping.
Can you give a example? Was there any example with you guys at Keyglee at the beginning or at any point that you're willing to share?
Let me think, dude. I think some that we would have would be like, that I think that we handled well, that I've seen tear a lot of other things apart, is the person that's outward facing. So like, let's say Jamil, for instance, has a relationship, and that relationship, so he's got this really good relationship. He hands it off to a team member, right? So now that relationship is now handled by the internal team, which is under me, right? Or under Hunter, right? And something happens between, let's say, an acquisitions rep and that contact that used to be Jamil's, that is now handled by the internal team. And that contact doesn't like the interaction somehow. So they talk to Jamil, and they call Jamil and they say, hey man, this happened. And they're all upset, and they bring that to Jamil. Right. So Jamil then could be like, what the heck? And call us all pissed off. Right. And then we've got this whole kerfuffle. Right. And so like, that's not great. Right. Whereas what Jamil always does is he'll have the conversation and be like, okay, let me collect all this information. 100%. We want to make sure you're taken care of. Yeah, we don't want you to be treated poorly. I'm going to get on this. Let me check in. They say that to the contact. Then Jamil comes to us and says, hey man, what's up, dude? So just wanted to run this past you. These are the bullet points that they had, wanted to connect on this situation and see what we can do to ameliorate it. Right. And generally it's totally, dude, here's he coming not with the lens of like, dude, you guys screwed this up and I'm upset at you,
right?
But coming with the lens of my partner would never intentionally mess this up. And obviously it knows, and we're in agreement that we treat our customers and clients and business partners with a tremendous amount of respect. So there must be some disconnect in conversation. And so there's just some missing link. Let's just have the conversation. We'll get this solved. Right. So bringing that type of an attitude to it results in resolution, and the client's happy. Jamil never got heated or got worked up. We never got heated or got worked up. Resolved, no issue, easy. Awesome. Whereas a lot of times what would happen is this person calls this partner that they used to work with. They call the internal partner, pissed off that the internal partner did these terrible things, you know what I mean? And doesn't care about their customer, and is like, I'm like, when the customer was with me, they were awesome and always happy. Now they're with you guys and they're all pissed. Oh, what's wrong with you guys? And then this person's all defensive. Then they get all upset at each other.
Right.
And it's a ginormous deal. And so we have the opportunity to make everything a ginormous deal in business. And the best leader brings peace, period. Right. So no matter what the circumstances, if you are a leader, you are a bringer of peace. Right. And so if you're not adding peace to every situation, you're not leading. If you're the person that escalates it, you're not a leader. You're not leading. Right. Like if you're making everything seem like a bigger deal than it is, you're escalating. The leaders de-escalate. That's how they're able to handle so much. Right. If they were to escalate everything, they couldn't handle anymore. Right. And so like in a partnership, you want to be de-escalating things always, not escalating them.
I love it. I love that so much. That was like one of the best quotes ever said on this podcast is leaders are the ones who bring peace to the situation. I really like that. One last partnership question, just because I've been thinking about this all day and now I've got you here. So was there any like imbalance of like how many deals you guys were doing, and then like any decision of like anybody being like, hey, like I deserve more because of I'm doing more deals or doing less deals or anything like that? Or was it more just everyone's like, nope, we're going in it equally, I see each equal part? I'm just curious if there are any conflicts like that at the beginning.
So there's lots of things that you want to add, right? Like there's things that you want to factor in because you want it to be fair, right? You want it to be 50-50, but there's other things outside of deal volume that make it 50-50, right?
Right.
And so considering those additional factors, like there might be 15, there's probably hundreds, there are hundreds, but you might consider 5, right? Like what hours does the person normally keep, right? In their work? What assets do they have? And what will those assets impact my business, right? Like, let's say that you've got a ton of deals you cancel on all the time and they've got a ginormous buyers list. Right. Like it doesn't really matter that they're only selling two deals a month right now because no one brings them their deals. If I've got 20 deals that I know would sell to their list and I'm doing 10 deals right now, but I know I'll be doing 30 as soon as I join them, even though they're only doing 2 right now, that's a pretty great gig. You know what I mean? Like,
I get what you mean.
All of a sudden, you know
what is the X factor basically is what you're saying. Like how much are you going to X factor with them on it? Yeah.
And you're trying to, because remember, it should be a multiplier in the partnership. You should cause each other to go more than what you could do alone. Right. And more than just 1 + 1. It needs to be 1 + 1 = 11 type of thing.
Yeah, I've said that before. I've said that exact quote. I can't like, I might've gotten that from you. I'm not sure. Like I've heard that.
Definitely not, bro. I don't know if that.
It's a common one. Okay, cool. I'll get off partnership. So you guys come together, you freaking start crushing it. But then what happens? Like what are the new fears that you're dealing with, right? Like what are the things that are the emotional headaches that start coming once all of you guys start working together in order to make something awesome? Right?
Yeah, dude. So the biggest thing in partnerships is if you feel like you guys might be diverging in agreements, and this is where like roles and responsibilities are super important. So actually starting to build the right structure that allows you guys to succeed as partners, right? So originally you're just next to each other, so you talk to each other all the time. But then as you start to grow, right? Well, then you need to set up roles and responsibilities. Who owns what? Who gets the final say where? Those types of things, right? Otherwise, you'll constantly have friction between each other. And then you'll also have things like, you told one employee that they need to improve in this area, and they went and talked to your partner to complain about that. And then your partner called you and said, hey man, just want to let you know, like some such upset, somebody what you said. It's like, yo,
Right.
dude, no, bro. Like you need direct
Right.
reporting lines. And so you start to add in structure, and in absence of structure, I think that's where those like two things. When we originally had Keyglee and we didn't have structure as dialed as it could be, I think that's where it's, I don't know that we didn't, honestly, dude, we've been so blessed, man. Like God just set up our partnership so well. It's been amazing. But I can see where a lot of partnerships have difficulties there, because you've created this amazing thing with this other person. If they go sideways, right? If they go sideways altogether and they go off crazy town this way, well, it destroys what you guys built. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's dependent on both of you guys working together, right? And heading in the same direction. If they decide that they're going to just shoot off to the side, then that threatens what you guys have built. And that can be like, it can be scary to give that amount of trust to a partner. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one.
So why weren't you afraid of that? Like, what would you just feel it? Were you just like, oh no, it's going to be fine? Or was it might have been just because you were doing so many deals together already?
No, I think that honestly, dude, like one, I think that we really made a good effort to communicate. And the other part is just like, we're just super blessed. Hunter and Jamil and Rahim are all amazing people. And so amazing people, that helps tremendously. And then really just that combined effort to communicate constantly, so that we're all sharing the same data points, led us to make a lot of the same decisions. And dude, the Keyglee is really big on the foundation of love. You know what I mean? Like, don't interpret things through your past negative experiences and lenses, right? Always give the other person the benefit of the doubt. Always, right? So anytime you're coming into a conversation, you give them the benefit of the doubt, right? And I think those things have served us tremendously well, making our partnership really healthy. So that would be,
I love it.
Yeah, my thought there. I had one other fear that we came. Oh, the other fear is just like when you're hiring in people, like it doesn't matter how much money you're making, right? You're hiring in people and you're like, oh man, like, you know, I'm starting to have overhead, I'm starting to have fixed costs. Exactly. And if I mess this up, it impacts all these people's lives. I think that's a natural fear, you know what I mean? When you're starting a business, and or like when you're buying your first few houses, you're committing to houses, dude. And the thing is, like, you just got to commit that stuff to God, jump off the diving board and go for it. So
I 100% know Keyglee is like an incredibly kind of like religious organization, God oriented. How do you guys feel that's like impacted your guys' success, right? Like how, like you guys, I think you guys all met at church maybe, or at least you met Hunter at church, right? And then you guys like how do you feel like starting that foundation there with like God or religiousness or even spirituality just in general has like affected everything?
Dude, that's an amazing question, bro. I mean, I attribute all my success to God, right? And so it's cool, man. Like there's this bit in the Bible. I need to pull this up in Deuteronomy, I think. Deuteronomy 8 something or other, but basically it talks about
I'll be pulling it up while you're saying it. Don't worry.
Bro, if you find
the
it
exact
hold up.
Pull out the Bible real quick, guys.
All right, here we
go.
go.
Do a mini Bible thing.
That's bro, you just got to put up with it if it's me. It's just how it happens.
It's all good.
But this thing was super impactful for me, bro. It was where is it at? All right, if I can't find it in 2 seconds, I'll just call it. So you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your forefathers. But it's him that gives you the power to get wealth, right? And so I think the biggest thing that kills leaders, bro, is pride. Like it's pride before the fall. You know what I mean? Like they start to attribute stuff to themselves. They start to get cocky, and literally it's like, yeah, boom, right? Like there's so many examples of that where pride comes in and then people just can't work with that person anymore, right? Or no one can teach them anything type of thing. And they become toxic to their environment or to their workplace, and everything just implodes, right? And so I think what's cool about that verse is it talks like, you know, what I believe is that God gives you, God has a plan and a purpose for every single person, right? And he's going to place some innate desires in your heart towards that purpose and that plan, right? So like a lot of people were asking me, it's like, you know, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I'm not sure that that's what God has for me. And I'm like, bro, if you've got the desire, dude, And it's like God put it in your heart, bro. Go for
Right.
it. Like that is your validation. All right. And we tend to think that everyone's like us. Like, yeah, but everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. It's like, not true. Not true. Not true at all. Just because that's us doesn't mean that's everybody. And if you're watching this, God probably put something like that on your heart. You know what I mean? And that's part of the plan and purpose he has for you, because those align. And with that, he's equipped you with gifts and talents in order to pull that off. Right. And so that's what it's talking about. It's saying, hey man, the God's saying, yo, dude, I gave you some amazing gifts and talents to be a great business person. Right. But I gave them to you. Right. And so we still making sure that we point back the success, right, and acknowledge him in all things. You know what I mean? I think it's hugely important. So as far as our success as an organization, I think is entirely due to God blessing us and giving us the gifts and talents we need to excel in it. I think that as far as setting it up as a Christian organization, it's a joy, dude. Like we've got a good works project where we're able to do like really cool things for, like kids, orphans in Cambodia, right? Like building an orphanage for them. And in Tanzania, like I'm going to Tanzania here in like literally 10 days. And
nice.
We've got some schools out there that we're supporting. We're going to visit a hospital that they're setting up. Like there's just all of these amazingly good things that we can do, right, with the money that we've been blessed to generate. And bro, it's so good, dude. Like it's just a blast. So as far as, I think there's like, honestly, dude, I could talk forever on setting up a Christian company or spiritual principles. But I think specifically, dude, it's the love aspect and the care that you have for each other, and looking at each individual person as someone that God sent here. You know what I mean? Like, and having the fear of God that God entrusted them to the organization that you're leading. Right. I think that's freaking huge, because you want to make sure that like God, you want this to be a place where God sends his kids to grow. Right. And so you want to honor God in that. So I think that's big. And then the other thing, dude, that's just been huge. Honestly, dude, like has been so amazing for me is like when things get stressful, which they do, you know what I mean? Like just being able to rely on God and be like, God, I know you got it, dude. It's been just the biggest game changer ever, bro. Like, yeah, he just always provides. So
I 100% agree that I've noticed, I'm not incredibly religious to be honest, but I definitely have noticed that like it is like insanely common among the most successful people in real estate that they really have like a strong either Christian or just some sort of belief or whatever. I have a strong belief in what I call the universe, which might just be a different name for the same thing anyways. But it's something I've noticed where it's like and it's exactly what you just said, that like moment, like having just a moment to be like, something's going to take care of this and it's going to be all okay. Everything's going to work out. Shit's going to go to the fan and it's totally fine. This happens. Sometimes title companies take my 13K EMD and give it to the buyer. You know, it just is what it is, right? That happened to me like 3 weeks ago. Mike, it's just like, I can't deal with this. Like I can deal with this. It's just not going to be, it's not going to be in the world. We're cool, right?
Yeah.
So Josiah, I want to respect your time. You got 3 minutes, but there's one question I always ask everyone at the very end of the podcast, which is, if you could go back in time to Josiah right when he's making that first call, like, and he's scared as hell and he's doing the gulp, right? What would you say to him now, knowing everything that you know today?
I would probably just say, hey, dude, mess it up. I'd just be like, dude, you only get your first call once, so just jack it up. Make it the worst call ever. You need a story. But seriously though, dude, like just do terrible. Like just absolutely throw it in the dumpster. Make it the worst call of your entire life, because it doesn't matter, right? What does matter though is that you made the call. And so I think that when we see worst case scenario is it's the worst call ever. And then we realize that doesn't matter if it's the worst call ever. Like the guy that I had the first like buyer call with, I botched the crap out of this call. By the way, like the guy was like, "You're a fake." Like on the call, I was like, "How did I even mess that up so bad?" And I was like, "Sheesh, dude." And I've sold that guy like 20 houses.
Amazing. To this day, you've sold him 20 houses?
Yeah, he doesn't know that I'm the same guy, right?
Yeah, I was about to ask. Like, I was curious if you knew it was the same one or not.
Yeah, I do. I know it's the same one, but he doesn't know. Right. And so
did you call him like 3 years later, or how did he not? How did he?
I don't know. It was like, I think I.
But you just kept calling him eventually.
I don't even know. I think I sent him like a Facebook message, or somehow he saw my website and got on my email list, and then called me off the email and didn't realize I was the same person. I don't know how it happened.
That happens sometimes.
Basically, if you've got deals, it's really hard to put yourself in such a bad position on one phone call. You can on 10 phone calls that someone doesn't want to buy that deal from you, right?
Right.
So honestly, just make the call. It's not that big a deal. And then by the time you get through a handful, like 20 of them, 40 of them, whatever, then the phobia goes away. You get comfortable. But then after that, you actually get good. Right. Where you like to get on the call because you're going to crush it. You're going to do a great job.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it just reminds me, I forgot I don't know who quotes this is, but you don't lose until you quit, basically. Like that's literally it. Like you haven't lost until you stop, more or less. Right. So
100%.
Anywho's, my man, you're amazing. You're a beast. I appreciate you so much. We're going to do next week. Next week, we're going to be back on our normal time, guys, 6 p.m. MST. Guys, Josiah is amazing. Josiah, is there anything you want to like promote or anything you want to you want people to go to, or like maybe who send you deals at a certain place, or have an email, or
just
I don't know.
Follow Jonah's channel. Okay. Dude's stud muffin. Love him dearly. He's awesome. Also, bro, the little intro to this podcast, I'm just saying, thanks, fire. Okay.
It is. My social media manager did. My man, just again, you are a special human being. I love you so much. You always get me pumped up. I'll keep saying this to you. I've said this to you before. You gave me the let's freaking go. Like, let's go. Like, I do that with my team all the time now.
Love it, dude.
Whenever anything happens, whether it's good or bad. Because I literally remember you doing that to me when something would happen that was like somewhat good, right? Like I got something under contract and you're like, let's freaking go, even though it's like 50K above what it needs to be, you know, right? Like it doesn't matter. I learned that from you, so I appreciate that little nugget. That's one of the best ones I got.
Awesome.
All right.
Appreciate you, bro.
I love you, dude. I will see y'all next week.